Righto, good morning everybody. It's a beautiful chilly morning and I'd like to welcome you all. We've got some members from all the way out in Jingellic and also notice all the way out in Lavington, you too, Phil Clements. Before I get started, I'd just like for us all, actually just a quick show of hands, wave to your camera if you can hear me, just to make sure that I'm not, yeah, there we are. God, that's cool. That is very cool. Before we get started, I'd like for us all to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we're each meeting from today, wherever that might be, and pay our respect to our elders, past, present and emerging. Welcome to our first Business Before Hours online using Zoom. Pretty unique opportunity to only have to wear half your uniform, the top half. So I hope you're all taking advantage of that, or for those who have not got your video on, I hope you're enjoying being in your PJs. Bronwyn Tyrrell not pointing in any particular direction. I'd like to welcome and introduce our staff. We've got with us this morning Ross Smith. Ross is new to our team. Ross is in our membership engagement role and has a very, excuse me, he's got a very extensive background in economic development, small business. He's a lovely bloke to chat to. He's genuinely curious, which I think will be a great thing for you guys as members, so he can pick your brain and really find out what makes you tick and what you need. We've also got Gabby Burke on with us this morning. Gabby is in a membership engagement role with us as well, and she'll also be taking on some communications for us in the next couple of weeks. Rachel Croker, you have pulled this all together. Thank you so much. Rachel is our business support and events manager. You've done an exceptional job making this happen, Rachel, so thank you very much. I'd like to welcome our board members. Not sure if all of them are present, but we've got Bron Tyrrell, we've got Alex Berry, we've got Barry Young, Celeste Pearce, Graham Chapman, Steve Owens, Renee Nightingale, and Hamish Taylor. If you'd like to get in touch with the board, you can do so via our website, and there should be a contact the board button. I'd also like to make a special welcome to Alice Glacken, Councillor Alice Glacken from AlburyCity Council. I'm not sure if she's here with us yet. She had a radio interview this morning. I'd also like to make a special welcome to Frank Zacknich, CEO of AlburyCity, Brad Ferris and Tracy Squire, Deputy CEOs of AlburyCity, Sue Harper, Team Leader of Tourism at AlburyCity, and Ambrose Glass, Team Leader of Business and Lifestyle. I would also like to make a very special welcome, if I can try and be clever enough and click a few buttons here. I'd like to acknowledge our sponsors who in normal day-to-day business support us incredibly, but through these challenging times are supporting us even more. So I'd like to acknowledge AlburyCity, Qantas, BEC Business Advice, HIB Insurance Brokers, and Blacklocks Lavington, who are our platinum sponsors. I'd like to thank 1494 2AY for being our media partner. I'd like to thank Harwood Andrews and IBT, our gold sponsors, Shoreway Employment and Training, our silver sponsor, Integrity, Total HRM, PRD Real Estate Albury, RSM Australia, and Peter Stewart, who are our bronze sponsors. Look at me clicking buttons and making myself look good. I would also like to welcome any new members that we've got on this morning. I hope you find the event enjoyable and useful for you, and I hope it gives you a bit of an insight into the community and the family that we've got here at Albury Northside Chamber, because it is just that. And what we're seeing through, not just through the bushfires, but also now COVID-19, is a real sense of strength and unity. And I hope you new members get to witness that as well, because I know it's a very powerful thing to be able to have those around you to support you in these times. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Frank Zacknich, CEO of AlburyCity Council. We're very lucky to have Frank with us this morning to present on the draft AlburyCity budget. We're going to try and hand over to Frank so he can share his screen and speak to the budget. And Frank, just when you do so, just don't forget to unmute your microphone as well. But over to you, Frank.
Thanks, Carrick, and thanks for having me at your various places this morning. Great to see all your smiling faces. And as Carrick said, the strong working relationships are something we really need to maintain and grow in these challenging times. So I've got 10 minutes. I just want to make sure we get that through that in that time frame and have time at the end for questions. So thanks again. Draft budget time this time of year. It's been a challenging one to pull together with COVID obviously upon us, and also the demands of a growing city on the other hand. So really a budget we put a lot of thought into with our councillor group out now for public consultation. So important to understand who we are at a point in time. So as I mentioned, a growing regional city, nationally significant regional city, and a growth rate of almost 2%, quite a young population again, which is great for us in terms of development, workforce, growing family, and support for industry and the great environment we live in. Still a reasonably high median weekly income, although that's obviously taken a hammering in the last 3 or 4 months. A number of private dwellings, we're experiencing still around the 450 to 500 new dwellings per annum, so still significant growth even during these challenging times, still construction activity occurring, which is a really positive thing. How we live is also a good snapshot for us. About 25% each couples with kids and without kids, single person households, really important at this time as we reach out to each other and support our neighbours and community, building those stronger relationships, even though we are challenged from a social distancing point of view. Single parent families and group households make up the rest. And again, as I've mentioned previously, quite a significant number of registered vehicles, which provides a couple of challenges, obviously how we manage that traffic going forward in a growing city, but also encourage uses of other forms of transport, public transport and active transport in terms of bikes, walking and connecting the city through a great range of pathways and footpath networks. A strong budget again, as I mentioned, balancing the impacts of COVID and what we can do to support our community, business and residents in partnership with the state and federal governments, but also making sure we continue to invest in the growing city to encourage employment, contractors, trades to undertake the work that we can encourage to happen from a regional and local development point of view. So as I mentioned, a two-pronged approach. The COVID pandemic, we understand that's having a significant impact on residents and businesses in particular. So we focused on trying to relieve some of that burden with decreased waste management charge proposed as a one-off decrease this coming year. No increases to any of the statutory fees. Debt recovery, no interest applied to overdue rates or payments during that time up until October 2020, and we'll certainly review that then. Waiving of leases and licences for community and sporting groups. No fees around outdoor dining activities, obviously restaurants and cafes being significantly impacted. And a separate also COVID-19 hardship relief package specifically targeted at affected residential ratepayers in this instance. In terms of business though, we have a range of measures that we've circulated through the chamber and direct to our business contacts around what we're doing for business in partnership with the state and federal government. Again, similarly applied assistance is in place there, and obviously our business economic development team and our rates and revenue team are just a phone call away or an email away. If you are experiencing difficulty, we do provide a concierge service there to assist you navigate through what's available and what council may be able to do to assist in its role in support of you and your business at this difficult time. As I mentioned earlier, the other prong in our approach is to make sure we continue to invest in projects in the city. So you've seen the great work already underway through the Riverside Precinct area, out at Wonga Wetlands, the Wigira Trail, and the extension of the Inter-Borough Sculpture Walk, a further 12 kilometres around the Wonga Wetlands area, so that when people do get out and about again, and they will do, as we start to see some relaxation of COVID restrictions, we've got an amazing natural environment for our residents and visitors to activate and participate in. Some of the key sort of roads and bridges and footpath projects you'll see underway: Keene Street reconstruction there, additional footpaths, as I mentioned, expanding that existing network, focus on the CBD bike loops, moving the bicycle traffic away from the heavy vehicles and the heavy traffic. The link roads development out through the Goona, so additional planning there to connect Elizabeth Mitchell Drive up to Davey Road. Interchange, which we've received federal and state government approval for now, and funding. Elizabeth Mitchell Drive, you'll see that intersection become a traffic light controlled intersection in the near future. Works out at Mudge Street and the creek outfall at Bungabbawatha, and again, significant road and drain rehabilitation projects. All of these generate employment, not just for our own people, but for contractors and trades across the city and region. We also deliver safe and reliable, clean drinking water and an efficient and effective sewer or wastewater management system. So again, investments there. A lot of that work in the ground, of course. You don't see a lot of that, but when it works properly, everyone pretty much takes it for granted, I suppose. We all do, that it works and operates. When it doesn't, you know who to call, and when the work's required, maintenance and renewal of those existing assets and extensions are a really important part of supporting a growing city. Other investments out at the Albury Waste Management Centre, you've seen work out there recently. A big focus for us in terms of renewables and ensuring recycling and reuse is a focus for us. Works at the Albury Swim Centre, additional design for an extra deck at the Wilson Street car park, and works out at the Albury Airport Terminal when we are back in the swing, and that will happen in a graduated way. Security screening improvements legislated by the federal government. Further investments, the final stages there of Lavington Sports Ground, as it's now to be called, and Ernst Grant Park, of course, cycleways, Albury Skate Facility, and the Regional Growth Environment Fund that I mentioned along the Albury Riverside Precinct, and many of these in partnership with state and federal government, which is a great initiative and partnership for us to continue to grow and develop. So all this comes at a cost, so there is a contribution. Again, in a COVID environment, we're looking to reduce the burden there on residential and business in particular, so you'll actually pay less per week on the average residential property. There is a rate increase, of course, around 2.2%, but that's offset by reduction in the one-off domestic waste management charge and no increases to water and sewer. And business properties, likewise, your rates will increase on average around 2.1%, but again offset by, for those businesses who access our domestic waste management charge, a reduction, and no increases in water or sewer charges again this year. So hopefully that'll help to ease some of that burden going forward. Where does that money come from? The majority of our income comes from rates and other charges and user fees and charges, almost 80%. The balance is from our operating grants and capital grants from federal and state government, and then other income on investments that council holds. And again, that's obviously been hit hard in terms of the low interest rates, but around $140 million per annum in income that's managed and made up of those significant contributions. Where does the money go? In terms of For every $100 of rates that's received from an operation and capital investment perspective, you can see where the large investment areas are. Obviously in capital works, economic developments, roads and infrastructure are linked in terms of maintenance and renewal, environment, waste and sustainability in terms of waste management, water supply and sewer management, community and recreation are the big investment items. So all this is out for public and community consultation at this stage in a new way. We're running a series of webinars, unable to obviously hold at this stage any sort of face-to-face one-on-one discussions, but we've got a webinar each week now for the next 4 weeks. So by the 28th of May, 29th of May, we're happy to receive your submissions. All this is out for public comment, as I mentioned at this stage. Documentation on the website and feedback, as always, welcome. So thanks, Carrick. Happy to take some questions now.
Thank you, Frank. Now we've had one question coming through the chat. I'd just like to urge anyone that does have a question to just click on the chat button down the bottom of your screen and type your question in there. Frank, we've got a question here from Phil Clements. He'd like to know when the Davey Road works are scheduled to start and finish.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Phil. And so we're in detailed design stage at present. So the first milestone for finalisation of design and then the tender process is the 30th of June. So we're working at 30th of June this year, that is 2020. So we're working with Transport for New South Wales, who are essentially running the project with council as a partner, and obviously the federal government's involved with their recent funding announcement as well. So that's the next milestone, and then after that we're looking at up to an 18-month program. So Davey Road interchange, all things going well, by early 2022 is the target date for completion.
Thanks, Frank. I've just had one come in from Andrew Cottrell as well. Andrew, I'm going to read Andrew's out because he's written a small essay here. Thanks, Frank. Great to see the significant AlburyCity response to the COVID impact on our regional community. In relation to the stimulating the pending economic recovery and getting people back to work, is AlburyCity considering bringing forward major projects to kickstart the economy?
Yeah, great question. Thanks, Andrew. We certainly are. And some of those you've seen in the draft budget are projects that have been brought forward or are continuations of projects currently underway. We've certainly made submissions for other shovel-ready projects and partner funding to the state and federal government. Most of those are around bringing forward our roadworks program, which is the focus for federal and state government at the moment in terms of their investment. The other projects, of course, are on the back of either drought or bushfire funding, which this council directly hasn't been a recipient of because we're outside the directly bushfire affected areas, even though we have been lobbying through state government in particular to encourage relaxation of some of those guidelines so that cities or councils on the periphery of the bushfire area can actually access some of that bushfire impacted funding.
Thank you, Frank. We've also just got another note here from Alex Berry. Just a positive comment. The Lavington Wagga Road extension has been met with applause from quite a few resident businesses, says Alex. Yeah, thank you. And I think I might have mentioned before, for us, the work hasn't stopped in terms of some of those projects in terms of timing, because in fact we've been able to move those projects along quite quickly or at a greater rate because of the less traffic, less pedestrian movement, which makes us able to, and our contractors, to undertake that work at a higher rate, which is one of the positive outcomes, I suppose, if we're looking for them. We certainly are from the COVID impacts. Absolutely. Righto. Well, there's no more questions. So, Frank, we might wrap you up. Thank you so much for sparing the time. Thank you for always being a conduit to council, especially on things important like the budget. I would encourage all members to really have a good in-depth read of the budget. I know we're all pressed for time, but it does affect you, and you do have an opportunity to have a say. And I think it's very important that we all take these opportunities when we can, because it makes the council's job easier, and it will hopefully make your jobs easier as well. So thank you, Frank.
Thanks, Gary. Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Righto, so moving on, we've got Kevin Bascomb from BEC Business Advice here with us this morning. Kevin is going to be speaking to us about lessons from the bushfire, because Kevin has been spending quite a lot of time working with the businesses in the bushfire affected areas. So Kevin, if you'd like to unmute yourself, and if you've got a presentation, go ahead and share your screen.
There we go. I think I'm unmuted now. Thank you. And you should now there we go. Is that appearing correctly, Carrick? Are we? Thank you. Thanks very much. Good morning, everyone. It's good to be with you on what's a very chilly and foggy morning out here in West Albury. For most of you, I think you'd be aware that the BEC Business Advice, it's been around about 30 years. We're a non-profit organisation with a fairly large footprint. That starts up in the Riverina in Wagga, into the Snowy Valleys, and then west out to and including Broken Hill. So it's a fairly large area, quite diverse in its requirements, and more particularly recently with regards to the bushfires. So we deliver a program for the New South Wales government in our region called Business Connect. And basically the objective of Business Connect, if you like, is to help business flourish in whatever aspect that might be for particular businesses. So that can be for everything from intenders through to established businesses, and also those that are looking to exit. We deal with all of those across the full gamut of industry, commercial, professional activities, and so on. So yes, so the bushfires have occupied a fair deal of particularly my time, given that the Snowy Valleys and surrounding area is part of my territory. So I just thought I'd spend a short moment just explaining some of the physical damage that's occurred before we get into the impact on people and businesses. So I've probably spent up until about mid-March in the affected areas, basically living in those areas, returning to home at weekends. So down on the south coast, where I was based at the recovery centre in Ulladulla, they faced a total loss of their summer holiday trade, which is 7 to 8 weeks. And therefore a huge loss to the businesses down there. And it was quite emotional listening to the harrowing stories that people had, and just a sense of helplessness, really. How can I help? It just didn't. I'll get to that in a moment, but it was a challenging environment for all of us working in the recovery centres. But of course, nothing like what the people who suffered the direct damage have experienced. Now, closer to home in the Snowy Valleys, some of the figures there, for example, we've got significant losses, 185 homes, and you can see the other figures in there. Around about 40% of the softwood forests have been impacted. I think the total forest area is about 65,000 hectares. So you can see that a very significant amount of that has been lost. And I understand that there's about a 12-month window to get that timber off, to harvest that timber, before it actually becomes too difficult to process. It actually rots in some way. And an earlier study showed, this is all prior to the bushfires, that the forest industry in the Snowy Valleys accounted for, and Southwest Slopes accounted for, half of all employment in the region, either directly or indirectly. At the moment, there's a potential loss of about 1,900 processing jobs. So that's direct employment in the industry that could be lost after 12 months' time. So the major hit to the economy in the Snowy Valleys is yet to occur. They're working feverishly at the moment to bring in those logs and to have them processed. And where they can't process them immediately, they're storing them in waterways and dams and lakes and so on, which apparently does preserve them. The great effort in the Snowy Valleys economically lies in front of the business and community generally in the times ahead. There's obviously also been the immediate impact of a total loss of business, particularly around tourism over the summer period. Also, with the destruction of Mount Selwyn, something I actually wasn't fully aware of, but that sustains quite a number of other businesses, particularly in the, for example, accommodation area. So huge impacts, and overlaid now, of course, by the impact of the coronavirus outbreak. So they've received a double whammy in those terms. So what's been the impact on individual businesses? Well, it's actually quite variable. We've got, it varies between industry sectors and also within industry sectors. Just take the example of orchards, which of course is such a significant part, an iconic part of the Snowy Valleys. We've got some of them there that have lost everything, and others that are continuing to operate because only parts of their orchard were damaged or destroyed. With agriculture, the same applies. With the retail, medical and allied health, yes, the medical facilities, the GP clinics and so on, they're obviously seeing a surge in patients, particularly allied with the allied health, with the mental health activities. The allied health itself, that is regarded as an essential industry, but many of those have chosen to close for the period. Tourism and hospitality, we know the effects there. Transport and logistics is obviously one area in the logging industry that's actually held up, but faces a challenge in the time ahead. So let's have a look at the impacts on individual businesses. And the first one that came about, of course, was the insurance impact. This quickly revealed those that had no insurance or were underinsured or didn't fully understand their insurance policy. Fortunately, most of those that had the insurance, and they're the great majority of businesses that have been affected, do regularly review their insurance cover to ensure that it remains relevant and of the right amounts at all times. But there are those that didn't have any insurance cover. I have one client who has therefore lost his, in the horticultural industry, who's lost all his trees, so his prime productive assets, they've been destroyed. as well as all of his equipment and sheds. There's actually no way back for him, sadly. The best we can do in those circumstances is to ensure that his leaving the industry occurs in with the least possible financial and emotional damage. And I would just like to thank the professional service providers, the legal and accounting professions who have really stepped up during this crisis and providing pro bono support to people such as these, as I've just mentioned. Just one example for a perhaps not fully understanding an insurance policy was he's actually a primary producer, and he bought a piece of equipment. It was a wood chipper. I think the cost was around $150,000, which he was using off farm for other commercial work. He didn't check the policy until he lost the machinery and found out that in fact he wasn't covered because it was off farm. It was an agricultural implement intended to be used on farm under his policy. So he's unfortunately can't recover that through insurance. HR and IR, it's been fantastic to see the attitude of business in the area to support their staff and their families. It's been really heartwarming to see the concern there for their staff, and they've actually, wherever they can, they've actually kept them on the payroll, which has just been fantastic to see them do that, even when they haven't been, the staff haven't been fully engaged. But at the edge, there are some issues that have needed to be addressed, and in relation to releasing staff that are no longer required. So that has caused some heartburn for some of the businesses. So that's another area that we recommend that businesses should look for assistance to get their HR and IR issues sorted as they come out the other side. Well-being, in the initial phases, there was just, I guess it was the shock. There are certain stages you go through, I believe, aren't there, in the way that you move forward, and just the people were stunned when they were coming in. They didn't know where to begin, what to do, and they were looking for guidance. So in the recovery assistance centres, there was lots of support being provided through chaplaincies, through the Army, through the Salvos and Vinnies and other community-based chaplains, and they were in great demand, and that is in fact ongoing. I've put just a point there about survival. Sadly, there are going to be quite a number of businesses that won't survive this period. They won't be reopening their doors once the economy the movement is loosened up and people can start getting out and about. They will not make it. So if I can just highlight the fact that this is business needs a roadmap to navigate out of these twin crises. We're referring to this as review, renew and relaunch. We suggest that people should be reviewing their existing plans, renewing those where they can. Everything needs to be looked at. That goes from loans to leases to cash flows to market directions to marketing strategies. They all need to be considered. As I want to say, quoting a former US president, plans are nothing, planning is everything. You need to give consideration to how your business is going to look after the crisis is over, the bushfire and COVID crisis is over. We don't know what changes in consumer and client behaviour are going to be permanent, and those that will revert to normal behaviours. So we need to be ready for that. And it could include, for example, finding new markets, new products and services, and also finding new distribution methods, such as going online. And just in that regard, please don't consider social media as having a database of clients. You need to have ownership of your database, something which I can talk about at another time, but we don't want to see you lose your business because you've got an ephemeral database which you in fact don't have physical ownership of. A very crucial part of any marketing strategy. The other thing that we've been discussing internally is the stickiness of customers, which is part of the review process, and I'm aware I need to wind up now, Carrick, is some of you may be attracting new customers as a result of the closure of other businesses, and we're just wondering what would be the stickiness of those new customers when we return to normal transmission. And I would urge you to do all in your power to ensure the loyalty of those customers you retain after we return. Because, for example, we don't know whether those past customers are now lapsed or whether they'll in fact come back to you. So we need a whole customer loyalty program strategy to ensure that you come out the other side with a good cohort of customers and clients who are going to sustain your business again into the future. Thank you, Carrick. I think that's my time. There might be room for a question or two if you wish.
Thank you, Kevin. We haven't had any questions come through as such, but I did notice that we've got Phil Clements in on the call as well. Phil actually works in forestry, and I just wanted to see if Phil, I've just unmuted your microphone, Phil, if you wanted to give any comment from your experience in the bushfire affected areas regarding the softwood that Kevin was referring to.
Yeah, oh, look, thanks very much, Carrick, and thanks, Kevin. Yeah, just to clarify, I guess a couple of things is plantation resource that was lost, of course, is actually double what Kevin mentioned, about 125,000 hectares, pardon me, and about 40% of that has been impacted by fires. Impacts on jobs and on economic activity is going to be absolutely huge longer term. At the moment, we're in a bit of a salvage zone where all the activities fall on at the moment, but once that salvage operations are completed, probably by the end of the year, we'll start to see some major impacts on the availability of resource. We also referred to a double whammy of the bushfires plus the COVID. There's actually a triple whammy coming that way, and that's the fact that the industry is forecast to take a very big dive at the moment, and that, of course, is very reliant on supplying goods and services.
Phil, your audio is just dropping out a little bit there. Sorry.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so it's basically, and we've also got Mary Hoodless here from up in Angelic. The impacts of this fire are going to last for years, not months or weeks. It's going to take a long time. The emotional impacts on people up there are very, very extensive, businesses and so on. So a lot of support's going to be required, and a lot of activity is going to be assisted up that way. So it is a major impact, and we get to see the worst fallout of that impact. That'll probably take another 6 to 12 months before that's really felt.
Thanks, Phil. I've just got a question here from Alice Glacken. What is the percentage of the 40% of the burnt timber that can be salvaged?
They're hoping to be able to salvage over about 4.5 million tonnes of product, which represents probably close to 18 months worth of normal production, if you like. So it is very varied. The plantation ages is what determines whether or not the products are salvageable. So there's material that are being used to go to the local mills and to Visy as the pulp and paper producer up that way. There is also a product that they can't use, but there is actually, believe it or not, a demand on the export market. So there's quite a lot of wood. There could be up to 1 million tonnes end up being exported through a holding point at Tollbrook and down through the Port of Melbourne. So there's a lot of, they're certainly going flat out to do as much as they can, and the prospect of potentially storing some black wood under sprinklers or as processed chip is also something that's going on at the moment.
I understand there might be some alternative timber supplies available in time, bearing in mind the trees take something like, Phil, I think about 20 years to come to maturity. But those alternative supplies, whilst the cost may not be a great deal different, it's actually the transport costs that will be enormously different, moving from something like $18 a tonne, I think it is, to $65 a tonne, something like that. So the cost of production go up quite, or cost of transport go up quite a deal.
So, and again, it's not a long-term sustainable solution. Unfortunately, it'll sort of tide things over a little bit. But the federal government has announced a package that's going to assist with some of that as of yesterday. And there's also a number of other things being looked at the moment. But certainly going to require that there'll be no going back to the old normal, if you like. There's got to be a new normal that's established for this industry, and indeed probably a number of others over in that.
So Carrie, perhaps just to finish off there, we recognise that there are no short-term fixes to this, and in fact we're currently planning to devote further resources into the region to ensure that we get the best coverage possible for the businesses that are needing support up that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kevin, just before we sign off on you, we've got a note in here from Mary Hoodless. Thanks for joining us, Mary. We know that you've experienced quite a lot firsthand and been through quite a lot. Mary, you've just said, thank you, Kevin. Our beef production property was 100% burnt. The house was saved. We were fully insured, and Estimate Insurance has covered 50% of our actual costs to date. This does not include the loss of production and impact on the income for the next financial year. So some pretty significant losses still being experienced, and obviously forecast to those effects are still going to be quite real and probably realised in more certainty in the coming years. So I think it's important that we have these conversations. I think it's very important that we have these opportunities to hear and share the stories, and hopefully that will bring an awareness around that that it's not over yet, and that we can all actually do something, whether that's even sharing knowledge and sharing information as well. So Kevin, thank you very much for this morning, and Phil, thank you for your ad-lib performance as well. And I'd like to now hand over to Virginia Boyd. Virginia is with us from the Border Trust. And Virginia is going to speak to us about, well, it's actually Local Giving Month at the moment, and she's going to talk to us about local giving and local benefits. So Virginia, if you want to unmute your microphone, and I'm going to try and push a button here and magically make your presentation appear on everybody's screen.
Thank you, Garrick, and thank you for sharing. I'm on an iPad this morning and it doesn't have the capacity to share. Good morning, everybody. Genuinely thank you for the opportunity to talk to you today, particularly given, you know, the current situation and that really wonderful report about bushfire. It has been a really difficult time. I think the way that we describe it, I work in health. I work at AlburyCity Health, but I'm a board director of the Deputy Chair of Border Trust, which is a passion of mine, is giving back to our local community. But it's been a really difficult time coming through the bushfires and directly into COVID. It's been a challenge, and it's been a challenge for small, medium-sized and larger businesses. So I really acknowledge that this morning's small presentation around Border Trust and the work that we do we're particularly grateful to be able to be here to talk to you a little bit about that. Garrick, the next slide would be great. Yeah, that's it. Who are we? Thank you. That's helpful. Thank you. So look, Border Trust has, we are a regionally local community fund. We raise money from and for the benefits of our local area. We identify areas of need through community grants and back to school programs. Exactly as Garrick said, right now, traditionally May is our giving month, local giving month. And in the past few years without COVID, we would have taken money boxes around and we would have asked people to donate to Border Trust in the month of May. The month of May is also special for Border Trust because that's the month that we give away, which is our event called the Big Give. So we launch we launch May Giving Month with a special guest speaker, and we had Dr. Elfine last year. For anyone that came along, we had a great presence. And then at the end of May, we give all the money away through grant funding. You can see just a few things about who we are. We are registered through FRRR. We are tax deductible gift recipients. We are local. We get the money locally. We bundle it up, wrap it up, and we give it out locally. And that's part of the appeal of Border Trust, I think. And look, I think that, the board members, we've had a number of board members a refresh, if you like, quite a diverse board. And given that, we've spent some time over the last 12 months, and we continue to do that, just to have a look at our why and make sure that we're actually hitting the mark, because we're a voluntary board, and we meet monthly, and then we have subgroups. So it's making sure that the energy and the empowerment we're giving back to our community and our community groups and our community as a whole is actually worthwhile. So we're reviewing a little bit about our why at the minute. Garrick, if you can go to the next slide, there's only. Thank you. There's one. Okay, we can talk. It's different to the one I've got, so I can wing it. But I guess that in what we've done, and just coming out of bushfires, I'm not sure if you would have known, but we started a bushfire fund appeal, which is currently, and there is a link, but I think we're going to run out of time this morning. But I will ask Rachel to send the link. There's our board chair, Grace Church, is talking about our bushfire relief fund, which was a big shout out to Hume Bank, who jumped on board with Border Trust on that not long after the bushfire started, and also the Maya Centre, who with a whopping 50k donation got that up and running. That has landed at the end of March at $112,000 that we've raised from our community and outside our community. You will see on Facebook and even in the Border Mail, a lovely young lady who happens to live in my home, who teaches in Balrain, but she's in isolation here not in isolation, but she's been with me since March here. A little school that she teaches over there has raised over $2,000 for the bushfire relief for Australia. So that's a massive effort for Border Trust, but it's not us, it's our community who generously gave, and we're just now looking at working with local communities who have been impacted, ensuring that is gifted back appropriately into the right people to actually help them to recover. So we continue to work with our community, enable different programs. There's a list of who we've supported over the years. There's Regional Food Share, Nolan House, there's a whole list, Gateway, Hume Veterans, Restart, Albury Wodonga Stroke and Brain. The list goes on. That's it. That's the one, Garrett. Thank you. So I think that we are only as good as the people that support it. And the next slide about how to get involved, Garrett, would be some of the things that we're working on. We had done a lot of work late last year and the early parts of this year, and like everybody else, these great ideas get a little bit stalled, but they're not going away. And one of them is to launch a Give 500, which we were planning to launch in June. We are now thinking that might be 2021, but that's actually, we are going to recognise anybody who's actually supported and endorsed Border Trust in the past, and then start to look at how we can do that in the future. There's plenty of ways for people to get involved. So I'm going to leave you with a big shout out to say, encourage you if you want to know anything more about Border Trust, if you want to know anything more about the community groups and the people that we support, or our grant funding and how that's done, please just, you can contact us directly. We, in up the top of Hume Bank, we have a tiny little office, and we have very limited skeleton staff. The rest is done by volunteering. And we are on social media, and we're out to sort of spread a really good message and support our community any way we can. So I think that's about it from me, Garrick. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions. Oh, Garrick, you're on mute.
Sorry, rookie error. Let me just pull up the chat and see if we've got any questions in here for you. No questions as such, but we've got a message here from Trish. I think it's Trish Ayres. Thank you, Board of Trust, for all that you do for our community. I'd like to echo that as well. I think you guys do a fantastic job, and I know Albury Northside are very excited and pleased to partner with Board of Trust on the BT Give 500 as well. When that is able to be launched, it's a great initiative, and I think there's probably now more than ever, I think there's more importance for local giving, considering the two kind of main crises that we've had in the last 6 months. So I would urge everybody to do some research in Board of Trust and really just get to know who they are, what they do, and how you might be able to be a part of that as well, because what goes in is directly benefited by the local community here. But guys, that's it for now on the run sheet. I'd just like to quickly thank all of our presenters. A quick event update as well before we all head off. We've got and another thank you from Matt Sexton. Thanks, Matt. Just saying thanks for all the presenters. Righto. So event-wise, keep an eye on our event page on the website. Aisha Umar has her last installment of her webinar series on managing work and home. That's that's tomorrow. We've got YBE, Young Business Edge, are doing Zoom sessions at the moment, given the current restrictions on socialising. We've got Business Before Hours. We've actually got another one next week. So the reason we've got 2 in a row is because we're playing catch-ups. So we've got another one next week, which will be great. We've got Aaron and Phil from Regional Design Service and Jim Ainsworth from Mad Mex. And that is on the 19th. On the 25th of May, we've got Project Management in Action. They have fired back up again, and they will be talking about project managing out of COVID-19. So that'll be a very interesting one indeed. That's at 12:30 on the 25th. And just to reiterate that if any of you would like to make comment on the draft budget, there are plenty of opportunities to do so. Just jump on the AlburyCity website and we'll circulate some more details as well after this meeting. Please, if you can spare the time, have a look at it and provide any comment that you can, because without the direction from you, the council kind of shooting, or not blind as such, but it makes their jobs a lot easier to do what we kind of need and want. So guys, I think that's it for now. It's been a very fun Business Before Hours this morning. We've had 50 people online, and I think that's a great turnout. I hope you've all enjoyed either wearing half pajamas and half uniform, or the full slog, whatever you've done. We hope you've enjoyed it, and please, register for next week, and we'll see you all again then. So thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everybody.